Yeah. 4-year-old does that to me all the time.
Okay. Hi, my name is Mark Monlux. I'm the host of Epic Sketch Time, and I'm a freelance illustrator in Tacoma, Washington. I do graphic facilitation. I like to draw cartoon reviews of movies. If you follow the link in the description below, you can check out some of my compilations that I've put together, and also access a link where you can sign up for a weekly email. Gentlemen, introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Bill Morse. I'm a freelance illustrator and cartoonist working out of Seattle, Washington, and I do a webcomic called Rhapsodies, which you can find at rhapsodies.wpmorse.com.
Hi guys, name's Locke. I'm by the handle of Mad Monkey Love, that you can find me on Instagram and so forth. Freelance graphic artist and illustrator. Working on some new prints this time, so pretty sick this week.
Now, Locke, I know you were just a few moments ago. You were showing Bill how to do something. Do you mind repeating those instructions for the audience?
Yeah, a lot of my.
And actually,
go ahead.
Sorry not to interrupt you, Locke, but perhaps it'll be more useful if I describe the actual problem I'm having. So, for example, this is the thumbnails I was working on, and I got it enough that I was about to put the borders on. Now I have the setting for the divider set to how I like it, as you can see here, but I've been wanting to make and yes, I can do this problem. So I've been wanting to do 3 rows evenly, and I'm told that the correct way of doing it is like so, but when I do it, it's not giving me the space that my manual setting had allowed me to have.
So what you do is, because you have that selected, go to your object tool, which is under right above that. I'm trying to see here. Your screen is on shared.
Okay.
So that is this guy here, right below the move tool.
Okay, move. That's M, right?
Yeah, the object to operational tool. Sorry.
Operational.
Right.
Wait a minute. Operation. Got it.
There you go. Select that one. There you go. Above that. You got it.
Okay.
Right now, you can actually. What will happen is, as you manipulate the corners, the spacing should start spacing themselves evenly.
Okay, so
when you select item, so if you decided to, let me see if I can try that here. I'll just do it. Create a new frame. So when you're creating frames, you should get a bounding box, something like this, right? That's how you would adjust. Right? Now, if there's an adjacent frame next to it, it starts pushing the other one over, which I have it incorrectly because I have it mine nested inside a nested frame. So if you look carefully on the layer palette, you'll see the frames themselves, right?
Yes.
And by selecting on that layer and moving the operation, let me see if I can get this to work.
Okay, so frame. Okay, stop me if I look like I'm doing something wrong here, but okay, that happened.
You can use your arrow key to nudge up and down. That's normally what happens is when you select that. There you go.
Okay.
Because the way I operate is I have to see your layer.
Right.
I can see the layer because it looks like you're not. Yeah, there you go. Now you're selecting it. There you go. Right.
Okay, they seem to be stuck together right now.
Yeah, you can unlock them by trying to remember. There's a way to unlock them. That way you can give more space and there's evenness.
Right.
It's been a while. I barely create frames. That's the only thing, right?
Yeah,
but it's there. It's here. This is where you're going to need to.
Oh, sorry. Let me repeat that. I'm looking at your frame now.
Yeah. So make sure you select at the frame level.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Once you select the frame level, then you can start like if I decided to move this guy, or if I wanted to use the arrow key to nudge. See, it's really slow, but if you do the shift, now you can go up in increments of 10.
Right.
So that's how you move frames around. Now, because they are so close to each other, I believe you can. This is the there's that little menu that pops out.
Yes.
There is a. It's hard to read on my screen here. Light guide, show all error. I think you can show only edited target frames. I believe that will be the default.
Okay.
Been one of those things.
Okay, so let's see. What's this?
Yeah, let me see if I can create 2 frames next to each other.
Okay.
But that's how you go about manipulating the frames. That's how I leave a lot of space and stuff like that. For me, the way I do things is I just drag out the first set of frames. Then manipulate that, then I drag out the second set of frame, and I just nudge things back and forth.
I get it. I'm very tempted to go back and do that right now. This is more of a future reference thing.
Yeah. What that will give you is you can actually nest frame inside frame. So the way I do things is if I have like a inlaid frame, for example.
Right.
Each frame, those border frames consist of folders, right? So you can have a background, then you have your background is basically your paper color.
Yes.
Right? You can turn on and off and change stuff. But you can nest frame inside a frame, and that way what you can do is you can manipulate the content of the outside frame while not affecting the inside frame, and versa, stuff like that. So when you're, there you go. Now you're figuring out angles.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like, technically that's one of the things I know how to do, which I try not to. Right. Okay, that's a lot better.
Yeah. But also, if you look carefully on your property panel, which is on this side here, the tool object panel. So when you select that frame, if you expand that, there is rules and sets inside that too.
Okay, cool.
Right? So now you can actually maintain the border size, border width. There you go. Brush shapes, colors, and so forth like that.
Okay, cool. I mean, it's interesting. It's sometimes a catch-22. Half the time, Clip Studio is like possibly want, and then it turns around and makes Illustrator seem simple.
Yeah, you got to consider this stuff was designed by a set of artists who doesn't really know about user interface design. This is just software that was just slapped together, and bits and pieces are here and bits and pieces are there. That's why there's so many menus to a point where I just shake my head sometimes.
Yeah, and if any of the rumors I heard about how it started out as a kid's toy are true, it explains so much.
Yeah. It's a lot of neat tools. The only thing I really love about this is just the brush engine itself.
Oh, definitely. It's one of the main reasons I use it.
Yeah.
Use it more than Photoshop whenever I get the chance now.
They start allowing to I'm starting to import my palettes too, by the way. You can import Photoshop palettes.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So I have these under these skin tone palettes that I've collected over the year. Right. I have the Copic palettes and stuff like that, Copic tones and stuff like that. So you can actually go and download the AOC file and just import that.
Yeah.
Right. Import set colors, then there you go. Right.
Right.
So you can actually, these are ACO or whatever the Photoshop file format, and they're really tiny. So, or you create your own.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I even in my brush library, I have. I started. I use the main 3 that I use, and you can see here's Lox brush. Right. 1, 2, 3. Those are the 3 I use. So it is Clip Studio is one of those convoluted mess of a user interface. There's better user interface software out there.
Right.
Again, it's like one of those things where if you like use Painter, Corel Painter, it's another one of those things where you really need to know where things are hidden. There's so many brush levels, so many stuff.
I started out with Painter and I stopped using it mainly because of the whole going back and forth with Photoshop thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of it is for me anyways, just when you are working in this stuff, just things in layer, right? Like for me, a lot of this is like just to get this Wonder Woman piece together. I mean, there's massive amount of layers. I mean, this guy alone is like 700 megs in size.
Wow.
Yeah. I should compress the layers. You know, I have layer elements for just the background logo, and each one of them is I'm using some sort of blending or masking based on that. Then I have the background portion, which is the flame.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so I separate them because it's just the way I used to work.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those habits where I've been building them for so long.
I know what you mean. It's tedious, but if you make a major mistake, it makes it easier to fix.
Yeah, and at the same time, if the flame is too bright, I can go in and fine tune it without affecting the actual overall character.
Right.
I at the end of the day, I'm really hesitant to flatten my layers.
Yes.
Unless I'm really 100% sure that I will never touch it again. Mm. But most likely, for example, if I need this for a poster, the background might not be the Wonder Woman logo. It could be something else, whatever it is, and I can extract that. Right, so which is kind of nice, and I can put it onto banners. I can put it onto whatever backgrounds, cards. I decide to change the background to a green or blue. At least I can, put a different tint on top of it or something.
Yeah.
Like a lot of my stuff. Yeah, go ahead.
Don't you save an additional file for when you're sending off things to the printer?
Yeah. When I do the export or save as, or save a duplicate of, and there's here's your Photoshop layer, right, which compresses it or breaks it down, or a TIFF format or whatever the format, right? Mm-hmm. Or I can just export it as a single Photoshop layer.
I use that one a lot.
Yeah, me too, especially when I send to clients. And that way, I don't have to worry about it. If they want specific layer breakdown, then I'll normally will take these folders that I created with all the layers. Mm-hmm. I will compress them and flatten them, right? And they become like 4 layers. The armor, the here's the head armor stuff. You can see there's textures I created in the rope.
Yes.
Right, but because I applied a glow to it, the texture kind of disappeared. But you can still see, if you look closely enough, you can actually still see it because I'm using a blending on top.
Yes.
So that's what I do with these. But the textures themselves are not really, they're just brush strokes with a darker tone, right? Mm-hmm. That's how come I can keep the, right? It's just enabling. A lot of my armored and all that other stuff, I paint in gray.
Yes.
Because it's value. I always for example, when I first start, I always do value, right? If you look carefully, this Deadpool is actually, he's a flat gray, right? Then I apply a light to it. So I know, so it's another gray on top of that.
Yeah.
Right? That gray itself gives me my value, my shape, right? So it gives me my depth. Then, as you can see, this red mask here that I have, I overlay it. That becomes then, other objects, as I overlay them, you'll start to see the element appears. So stuff like that.
Got it.
Right. But it starts to form, and you tweak that, and you tweak the brush. If I paint it a little dark or lighter here, sheener there, and it gives it more like a sharp edge.
Yeah.
And all the other stuff, and then that's what you do is that's what digital painting is.
Mm-hmm.
you apply layer like anything else. If you're painting an oil, you're doing the same thing, right? You lay down a complete coverage, like blue background or something. You know, Bob, what's his name? The painter guy. You know, he always does. I love that.
Liking on his name too.
Yes,
Ross, Bob Ross.
Yeah, Bob Ross. That's right, Bob Ross and the hairdo, right?
Mm-hmm.
I loved it as a kid. It's like, what he just did? What a little light paint in the background with an orange, and all of a sudden the mountain showed up with just like a little spatula kind of thing. Right?
When I grow up, I want to paint exclusively with a palette knife too.
Exactly. So it's exactly the same principle, but like when I'm telling people to. When they're painting or drawing, go back to your basic. You remember your teacher and all that stuff always said start with your shading of a circle with your pencil. Yes. You give it depth and you add shadows and stuff like that. Well, that's the same thing. Then when you apply color, it's just a layer on top, and you can erase off around it and do all sorts of stuff. So.
Yeah, no, as I said, appreciate it, because it's sort of, as we just said, it's almost as if their instruction book goes out of its way to be as little user-friendly as possible. And I've been trying to find decent user groups out here, but no luck.
There's if you let me think. I'm usually on the I don't know if you're on Reddit or not. There's a Clip Studio group.
Okay.
People post questions there. Then a lot of us will jump in and provide new captures and how to. Right. Then on top of that is the best thing is Manga Studio, those training videos that's on YouTube.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I have those.
Yeah. They're free. And Clip Studio, when you first launch it, there's that little web portal that they do.
Yeah. Yes.
There's a lot of tutorials, but they're more concentrated towards manga artists.
Right.
You'll see that. You'll see that. But
I have seen that, and it's to the point where it's sort of like sometimes what I think one of the reasons the interface on this one is
convoluted
as it is because all the American distributor did with this thing was merely translate all the words and didn't do anything else.
Exactly, and that's what it is too. The manual is non-existent whatsoever. Mm-hmm. You know, it's just a series of menu palettes here and there, and there's a crap load of sub menus and sub tools and things that I just don't. I shake my head at, and it's like, why did they put that over here? Then you got to jump over here. Then it's just like that little bit of texture panel that you have open there, the material panel. I don't even use that. I don't even step in that field.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I find the models useful occasionally, but ultimately I find it's easier to use Poser and then cut and paste a JPEG in from there.
Yeah. I haven't even touched that. I should though, but it's another one of those things where it's a lot as it is. My expertise is when it comes to layer blending. I love this stuff. My layer blending mode. It's just something I do. You know, just by changing the couple layer blending opacity.
Yeah.
And using the reference tool, this little looks like a series of what do you call it? Disk that's stacked on top of each other. And all it is you know, you create a base layer. Then what I do is I lock the transparency on that base layer. By locking that transparency, what it does is it doesn't allow me to paint outside that space.
Right.
Then what I do is with that new layer, I create a new layer, then I just tap this little button here, create the reference. So it's on top of this layer. Mm-hmm. So we're not really painting on that base layer. I'm actually just painting within this space, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like masking, right? That's what that is without actually going in. Like in Photoshop, you have to select the layer, create that little mask button, and create the extra mask and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
This one here is just, I just keep going. It's a lot quicker. It's tap, 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 tap. Right?
Right.
So I'm nesting on top of each other. So as you can see, I start nesting my layer elements. If I decided to move this guy up to the top, things kind of break. See?
Yeah.
You can see that. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I always paint my value. I always paint my value near the base.
Right.
Then from there on, if this is the red that I want him to be in, because I want more light here, but I don't really have to paint the light of the red. It's actually the light of the gray, right?
Ah, yes.
See that?
Yeah. Is that red set to color dodge or?
No, it's set for overlay. I just use.
Oh yeah, no, oh wow, I talk about me not knowing my skills. I generally use overlay just to wipe out some of the lesser gray scales when I would put one of my turn photos into line art recipes.
Yeah. I'd use that with the lines too. Actually, that's where this under you select some sort of line work or some artwork lines.
Yeah.
And you go up here and just go. There is convert brightness. Change color of line to drawing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you pick your color palette. So normally I do like this inking mode, but I really don't use the inking mode. I start that first, but I blend that with the main layer at the bottom, so it looks like there's an edge to it.
Right.
So eventually, this black will be blended to that gray, so there won't be a line anymore. But what it allows me to do is I keep those lines just in case if I want to do the lasso tool within that space.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's all I'm doing is it's thinking layers, right?
Yeah.
When you first do this, you're gonna end up with like 50,000 layers.
Right. Oh, and that and trust me, I get that from my Photoshop work.
Yeah,
it's weird.
But no, after a while, you've kind of figured out that okay, I'm just gonna do all the armored on one layer. I'm gonna do all the weapons on another layer. I'm gonna do something on the layer, and you're gonna figure it out. And eventually, you got this little workflow where you actually only have 4 folders, and each folder consists of either a background, a foreground, the character, then you can nest the character's armor and stuff like that. But you run into things like, oh, hair's got to go over top of armor or vice versa. And that's where you gotta just duplicate the layer, bring it up to the top, erase some stuff, and just paint on some certain areas. And you end up doing all these little tricks. But
yeah.
Right.
Great.
Then you have to watch your file size.
Noted.
Right. For me, when I'm doing these large painting, those are my main prints that I do.
So this is 600 DPI here?
Yeah, this is approximately 24 by 36 size, right? So that allows me for a lot more play if I need to crop in closer or whatever it is, like the Wonder Woman.
Mm-hmm.
That gives me a lot more play if I want to do just as 11 by 17. There's a lot more space around it, and keeping that layer intact, it allows me, if there's some weird aspect ratios, at least I can add that extra space in the back, because my background is like huge, right? It's this big canvas, and all I'm doing is just cropping it or zooming in and out, or just shrinking the whole character. And that because I kept everybody in a layer, right? And you can shrink the entire folder. So that allows you a lot of flexibility. And at the same time, if you run to the printer, you export this stuff, they printed it and it's too bright or too dark, then at least I can mute the color a little bit more, right?
Right.
So that's the advantage of this. If you do, most artists I know do a digital painting and they flatten everything. Then they go to the printer and it doesn't work out. They come back and they use the level tools and they adjust the curve and all this stuff to get saturation and colors and stuff. It's a lot more work.
No, I get you. I'm a total pack rat when it comes to layers. I wonder if...
Yeah. The other thing too is I save everything on my OneDrive or my
Yeah.
Google Drive or my Dropbox, so I'm not really that concerned. My only concern is the which corruption of the file, but most cloud storage is pretty good.
Mm.
You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
I generally just use Dropbox for whatever I'm working on at the time for
Yeah.
the so that I can go to a coffee shop or something.
Yeah. So a lot of these is when I export these, I export it as a big Photoshop file, and I can go in and save it as a library or something. Then I can use an Illustrator. That's where this background comes in.
Yeah.
That was created in Illustrator. So I just traced the logo in Illustrator, vector base, and exported that as a large vector graphic. That's why the edge is so sharp.
Ah.
Right.
So how does that handle? Because when I was doing a logo for this project, I was having a headache of, maybe I was definitely going at it the wrong way, where I was exporting it into, opening it in Photoshop, saving it as a Photoshop document, and then moving it over to
Illustrator.
Then closing it, then opening the Photoshop document in Clip Studio and cut and pasting it, and that's probably
that works too. But you have to consider your size, right? I always oversize. I really make logos really, really big.
Yeah.
Because it's vector based, and when you rasterize it, when you export it, like if you export it as a PNG file with transparency, you go like 600%,
right?
You make sure your logo is like 8 on an 8.5 by 11 sheet, for example.
Don't worry, the logo that I'm talking about, it was huge, but I shrunk it down for the comic strip that it was meant for. See?
Yeah, sometimes going big to small is just because it's not vectorized anymore. It's just rasterized.
Right.
I don't know if you can import SVG directly in here because there's a vector base in here, but I haven't looked at it. A lot of this is like it's not vector anymore. It's just rasterized, but it is a huge, it's a huge logo.
Right.
Right? And that gives me that really clean line. Now, if I started up with something really small and did this, because this is like 36 by 40 something.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, that I have to make sure that when I print it, it looks like, you're looking at, that's as clean as I can get it. But, when I exported the damn thing, it was, 600 DPI, and I think it was 11 by 17 or something like that.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. It's just a Photoshop layer. Just import that in and you just put it on, and that's the best part. Because it's already a layer. Right?
Yeah.
Scaling down is easy. Scaling up is hard.
Right. No, that I know.
Right. So yeah, that's all I can suggest when you're digital painting. A lot of my stuff, it's not really complex. It's just knowing how to play with lights and shades. Right?
Yes.
If you look at it, I can turn off all the layers. It's just grayscale right there. That's just me painting that, putting a layer of, I think, brown on top and doing a some sort of blend. Let's see what kind of blend. Where is that? Let's see. That's the hair. Where's the armor? So you can see the armor. I believe this is the armor. There we go. Okay, so that is the armor. And here is the color burn. This is color burn. There you go.
Oh, cool.
So it is a gray, right? So it's a little washed out here on my screen, but it's gray. I painted it as grayscale.
Yeah.
Other elements above it, of course, that looks like it's washed out, but it's actually gray.
Yeah.
Then I applied a color burn layer. And that color burn layer is basically a brown or an amber.
Mm-hmm.
I gave it that metal, right?
Right.
And that's it. That's the color I wanted, like a bronze kind of look to it, right?
Yeah.
Now, if I painted that green, changed that to a green or something, it would have been a, more of a I guess an age bronze look when it's green. Those kind of things. But again, it's it's just manipulating it. And again, her outfit itself is really it's just a bunch of smudges.
Yeah.
To make it look like the shape. But I'm playing with a lot of it is understanding light, right? Just light study. I'm playing with that you're seeing the flame in the background that's causing that golden reflection off of it.
Yeah.
The white sheen, and like if you look at flame very carefully, at the center of it is very bright white because it's hot, right? And as you get closer to a warmer color, it becomes darker. So that's all it is.
Got it.
Right. Yeah. The hair is still blue, though. The Marvel thing, I think. Because they couldn't use black. Was it that story about the Hulk being green?
Yeah. Oh, yes, green? I've heard that story. Yes.
I haven't heard the story. I'd like to hear it.
Well, originally Stan Lee was going for a sort of Frankenstein, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde thing. So he, in the issue 1, they had the Hulk gray with blue pants, but with the 4-color system at the time, it was a complete washout, and so they had to switch to primary colors. In the 90s, they lampshaded it and made and now that they had better printing technology, they lampshaded it and said, "Isn't it weird that when he first appeared, the Hulk was gray and turned green again?" And then they had the different version of the Hulk, who later on called himself Joe Fixit, who was once again a gray-skinned Hulk. But by that point, they had good printing and it worked.
Yeah,
though not quite as interesting as the green and purple was.
The green kind of stuck. Eventually, it was a happy accident, and it worked out really well. So there you go. Right? As you can see, my auto backup is kicking in.
Oh, weird! I thought it was mine for a second.
No, that's mine. That's mine. Every time I manipulate or change something, my backup is to kick in. It is a big file. It's approximately about 700 megs or so.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I was doing a couple commission a few days ago.
What was the commission on?
Grendel.
Oh, nice. Which Hunter Rose or one of the others?
Hunter Rose and Christine Spar.
Par, yeah.
Par or something like that.
Now I'm forgetting. You might be right, actually. Spar. Now I'm going to have to look it up.
Yeah. It was. Yeah. Somebody reached out for me from Southern California and asked me if I can do a couple of 9x12, and I did. Black and white ink and a little bit of red Copic, the splash to it. So I did Hunter Rose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot of ink. Dry brush too.
Doing the limited palette that that Wagner's fond of, or your own? Or
I added a little bit of my own little touch to it, a little bit more edge to. I posted on Reddit, and a lot of people liked it. Now they're asking me if I can do Grendel Prime. Is the other guy?
Yeah, cool.
It's so I'm just trying to figure out a pose for him, and a lot of it is just black and white. And I just did this for fun, like a Batman, and just taped down a bunch of paper, and I used my old acrylic brush, which is dried and brittle anyways.
Yeah.
Dipped in India ink and just went to town.
I like the effects a good dry brush will give you.
Yeah, right. It's just a little bit more fun because once it was a happy accident with this dry brush area here around the edges, so it's one of the many.
That is nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now I have to. And sorry, I just switched to your panel once when you switched to Christine. So how'd the hunter look?
That's Christine.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. There we go. There's Hunter.
Oh, very nice.
Sorry, there we go.
You guys are going to have to fill me in. I don't know anything about Christine or Hunter.
Grendel is. Are you familiar with Matt Wagner's?
With his what?
Matt Wagner, the cartoonist.
Nope.
He mostly works for DC. He mostly does work for DC these days, but he started out by doing two independent titles.
Yeah.
One was this one called Grendel, which is essentially where he's doing a villain protagonist of Hunter Rose is this master assassin, is this socialite, and
kind of like a evil Bruce Wayne.
Very much. That's the best way to describe him. He's essentially one of the best tries of doing the anti-Batman ever.
Yeah.
And what's cool about him is Wagner gave him a very, very specific biography, and so all of the stories where Hunter's story ends with him being killed in a fight against his main opponent, Argent. And so what makes this interesting is when he does other stories with Grendel, he has to fit them into what he's already set up, and so that whatever happens, we know that Grendel will eventually die.
Yeah.
Then Christine is his granddaughter, adopted.
That's correct.
She takes up the mantle in order to save her kidnapped son, and when it doesn't work out, she goes a little crazy when a revenge spree. And at that point, it's revealed that Grendel is this possessing demon, and so over the years into a far future.
On Mars or Jupiter or something like that. I forget what planet.
I wasn't aware of other planets. It was a post-apocalyptic world.
Yeah, robot now.
Where at one point, Grendel, the entity, for all practical purposes, takes over the whole planet or a society, and Grendel becomes an almost title of samurai.
Yeah,
and.
It was a good series, no?
Very. And I really enjoy it whenever Matt Wagner goes back and does another story with him, because it's interesting. He says he's always confused by how everybody's rooting for Hunter, and so every time he tries to. It's like how Conan Doyle got tired of Sherlock Holmes and tried to make him unlikable, but in the process made him more complex. In the case of every time Wagner takes another crack at Hunter Rose, he tries to make him worse and worse, and the fans love him more.
It's like it tries. You know he's dead. It just goes back, and the van wants more.
Have either of you seen a movie called The Third Man with Orson Welles?
I've only seen half of it.
Yeah, I haven't yet seen it.
I've heard. I've definitely got to see it in its entirety because I forget who the director is, but I love Graham Greene's cynicism.
So the character in it, the third man, I'm trying to remember the name of that character's
Harry Lime.
Harry Lime. So that character is pretty much absent for most of the movie, and then he shows up for about the last 15 minutes, which Orson Welles says is wonderful. It's sort of like everyone building up this character, and then he walks on the screen. It's like he didn't have to do any work.
Mm-hmm.
But that movie was extremely popular, and everybody loved this Harry Lime character that got so built up and then died, even though by that time he was a horrible, despicable person, had done horrible, despicable things, but never one to waste a buck or popularity. It became a radio show called The Third Man.
Oh, wow.
And it was all about Harry Lime's adventures, and Orson Welles narrated the entire thing. And he was the character, Harry Lime, the third man guy. But these were all the more humorous and humane aspects of him before he became this horrible, awful person. And I'm just wondering how often they must have been tempted to make him horrible and awful along the way. But they didn't because they were catering to a different audience where they wanted him to be the hero in a mildly anti-hero sort of way, as a not so much as a villain, but as what's another word for a bad guy that you root for?
An anti-hero.
Well, no, it's different than that. I mean, but he's still a villain, but not a. There's a word for a person who's a bad person, but he's not that bad. Man, it's not coming to me. A crook, a shyster, something along those lines. A flim-flam man, as opposed to an outright villain. So you can always listen to those.
I'll have to track him down.
Radio Antioch used to play him. They run through all the old radio shows, but yeah, I think if you did a search for The Third Man on Spotify, you'd probably. Matter of fact, I'll go ahead and do a look right now. Oh, that part me got killed. That's the Zinthar music that was very popular for The Third Man.
Oh. Went to work today and used up the entire box of tissue. The nose is all red now.
Oh, you poor man.
Yeah.
Well,
Yet for a 4-year-old, brings home all sorts of diseases.
well, at least you didn't have to travel. One thing I hate is traveling with congestion.
Yeah.
The instant the plane starts descending, I become acutely aware that my skull's made out of sponge.
Yeah.
These days, I have Dayquil in my travel pack just to be on the safe side.
Oh, my traveling pharmacy is much larger than that.
Yeah.
Oh, it would appear that if you type in the Third Man Radio, you'll find something called Good Old Radio, Vintage Radio Shows, and they have several Orson Welles shows. But if you also go to Radio Antioch in Antioch, Chicago, they broadcast a variety of radio shows. And they, I think at 3 o'clock, it's mysteries, and they go through a lot of different mysteries. You know, everything from they'll pick one series, go through it, then the next half hour another series, and they'll keep on that rotation until they run out of those mysteries, and then they'll go to another couple of new mysteries. So you'll get everything from Boston Blackie is another old radio show.
I don't think I've even heard of that one before.
Oh, actually, if you type in Boston Blackie, you'll get several years worth just on their own albums. Yeah, they did a couple of, maybe more than a couple of movies with him.
Mm-hmm.
That particular character had a very set format for the mystery. A crook and a detective who always Boston Blackie. You know, you never know what this guy does for a living.
Mm-hmm.
He might be a private detective. He obviously was on the force, no longer is. And then there's the police captain who's always trying to book him for something.
It's fun. Sounds like I've been starting to read the Philip Marlowe novels for the first time.
Oh, and there are some Brett Chandler radio shows based on the characters from the Maltese Falcon.
Uh-huh.
There's also one narrated by, let's see, I'm trying to remember what it's called, but it's basically Rick's Cafe in Casablanca.
Oh, nice. One thing I always liked about Casablanca is you could tell that you could have hundreds of stories.
Well, this is a radio program that was all before the movie Casablanca, about what his life was like and his relationship with the police before the French occupation. He was dealing with the Egyptian police.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, lovely murder mysteries.
Wait a minute, Moroccan police.
Pardon me, Moroccan. And it was narrated by Humphrey Bogart.
Nice.
So you got that voice still happening. And then I'm trying to remember if another guy took over, but he just sounded pretty much like Bogey anyway.
Yeah. Did you ever see the television version?
I did not see the television version.
I only know it exists because there was this television show encyclopedia that was out in print from the 80s to the early 90s, and so I frequently am browsing through it. I know tons of shows I never actually saw.
One of my friends gave me one of those encyclopedias. I'm trying to remember. It's from the beginning all the way up to, and I'll have to take a look. I think it was to the mid-90s as far as TV shows go.
Mm.
And yeah, My Mother, the Tractor.
Right.
And but when I was nearly all those TV shows, I saw almost all of them. Because, I was a child of that era. Car 54, Where Are You?
Oh, yeah. I remember watching that on Nick. I can't say I was a fan of it, but it was rather cool seeing Herman Munster playing a human being. No, not what was his name? Fred Gwynn.
Yes.
He was the best part of that show. And it sort of reminds me how I narrowly escaped having Herman as a nickname in high school.
Well, at least you didn't have the nickname Mono.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm pretty happy with how Zontar here is looking.
Oh, yeah. I remember you showing the original picture, sort of like.
Yeah, this is my my tint layer here, and I'm.
Do you ever feel guilty that you're giving some of these things way too much credit?
No, not in the least. There's a fan base that love these movies. They draw Zontar way better than I do.
Uh-huh. Yeah, because I mean, some of the original pictures you show, it looks like something some hack made in high school shop.
Well, if you had to make a movie monster and all you could do was just go to the local hardware store,
Mm-hmm.
you might find your endeavors about the same.
Heck, I've made some great stuff in one of the interesting bits that relics that I stumbled over when I was visiting my folks was this action figure I'd made by modifying a Ken doll. At the time when I was making wire sculptures, I was sort of sticking to Mattel's proportions because I figured at that point, after I made the figure, I'd have access to the Barbie wardrobe.
And nothing but crickets from Luck.
All right. I'm trying to make Deadpool's uniform look like he's wearing tights. It's amazing what you can do with just a little tone of gray.
Mm-hmm.
So oh, who am I over talking on? Whose speaker was that?
Not sure.
I'll talk really loudly, really quickly again. Nope, that's good. Okay. So let's see, what was I going to say? Paul and I have a mutual friend who died unexpectedly 2 weeks ago. And he was the chapter historian for the SBJ, the Society of Professional Graphic Artists, and the Graphic Artists Guild. And his family, pretty much everything in his apartment that was guild related got handed over to me last week. My living room's filled with all these archives, and I'm now trying to figure out the proper way of. Well, I can't keep them. So I'm trying to figure out where they should go.
Well,
And some wonderful leads.
I'm assuming that Kim is the first step, though she wouldn't be amused by us automatically assuming that.
No, I've talked to the folks at the national office, and Dan has already sent them a number of items.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be that what he kept was redundant.
Okay.
But I do know that some of the stuff is original to the Seattle area, like the original Seattle Minutes. And the SBJ was actually called a different organization. And I have their constitution and the original founders signing of that. He may have sent the original founding papers for the guild for their 501c3 to the national office, but I don't know. I haven't gone through everything yet. But there's a good possibility that the Tacoma has a resource library called the N Building.
Mm-hmm.
It basically has lots of historical documents from all sorts of organizations. So they might end up with it, which I hope is going to be the case.
Good luck with that.
Excuse me, guys.
So I saw a few movies since I last spoke to you guys.
Oh, cool.
I saw Ralph Breaks the Internet.
So is it worth up to, does it deserve its hype?
I wanted to see it while it was in 3D. And it was but the guy I went to see it with, he had never seen the first movie.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So his impression of it was not favorable. And I'm thinking, well, if you're dealing with a movie that's all about the continuation of a relationship that was forged in the first movie and heavily dependent upon it, then yeah, you're not gonna really get this. And that's pretty much what it was.
So is there any more to the princess scene than just what they were showing on the trailer?
Oh yes, the princesses are truly integral to the plot of the movie.
Oh, good, because I definitely want to hear Meredith talk more.
And let's see, another film I saw was Crazy Rich Asians.
Oh, I started reading the book, but how was it?
The book? I have no idea. I never finished reading the book.
I know how the book is. How was the movie?
It's a romantic comedy. It's a rom-com. My wife liked it.
that much I knew, and I enjoyed, and I what little I knew of it, the movie, was I liked the One, I liked a lot of the ways they were showing how the gossip trail worked online and all of Awkwafina's scenes.
All I know is I was crying through the movie that I actually had to sit through it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm not a rom-com kind of guy, so
Yeah.
I wanted to see explosions and kung fu fights, but apparently that wasn't the crazy rich Asian I was looking to.
Yeah.
Oh well.
What about the whole? Well, I don't want to ruin that scene on the boat.
Yeah, that was funny. There's funny moments, but you know, it's very rom-com. It's if you watch enough rom-com, you know.
It's following the standard rom-com formula, but everybody's Asian.
That's right.
You get that same combination if you watch a Korean rom-com.
That's exactly.
So it was blasting some, you know, rich stereotypes.
Yeah.
But then again, you've also had other rom-com movies that blasted rich stereotypes. The Little Princess, you know, various princess scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
It's 5:30.
Oh, and the computer tells us, gentlemen, that it's 5:30. I'm going to stop just a moment. I'm going to stop my screen share so everyone can see my wonderful face. There we go. I want to thank both of you guys. This will be the last Epic Sketch Time for 2018. The next time we do an Epic Sketch Time, it will be in 2019. We're taking a 2-week vacation because Christmas falls on next Monday, I think, or near enough.
Yeah, near enough.
And then the following Monday after that is New Year's Eve, and there's just no way to, you know, get anyone involved when they're all heading out to parties or being nannies for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
If you guys are watching this online, you can take this holiday vacation to get caught up on previous episodes of Epic Sketch Times. There's a master list at my website. You can also join the group by going to the link below and subscribing. Thank you, Locke, and thank you, Bill, and I'll see you guys next year.
You have a good one.
Merry Christmas, guys.
Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, yada, yada, etc.
Yeah.